The Broncos just got great news on a very key defensive piece. Alex Singleton, who very, very gruesomely tore his ACL last year, has an update on his injury status and his recovery. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. My name is Moose, and like I said on today's episode, we got some great news surrounding our linebacker. Here's what he specifically had to say about his injury status. He was on a recent podcast where he was asked point blank about when he's going to start, like to the day. When are you going to start? And he said, I still can't technically fully say, but let's just say that there should be no worries about playing this year. I'll be out there. He sounds confident, which is great to hear, because the one thing that becomes a question mark, especially for a player that's in his 30s, is how fast is your body healing, especially with an ACL injury. And if you remember, this was a gruesome injury week 3 against the Buccaneers. I mean, this was from his surgery where he is all smiles. I'll give him that. He's got a great attitude about it. But if you remember watching that, it was nasty. So, and again, like I said, you never ever want to take for granted an ACL injury. Those are very, very touchy things. I know that when you're younger, you can come back from those and your leg can actually become stronger than it was before you started. But as you get up there in age, and he's not that old, I mean, he's coming out of his prime, it becomes a bit of a question mark. Now, when he's on the field, this is one of the best in the game, period. Now, last year, through 3 games, he was already off to a wicked hot start. But in 2023, that's the one I want to highlight. This guy's a blanket over the middle of the field. I mean, how can you get better than this guy right here? Not only does he have the pass protection skills, but he can also make disruption happen when he climbs up into the box and stop the run. I can't wait to see him get back out on the field and cause havoc. And as I started to think more and more about him getting back onto the field, a question started formulating in my mind. And that main question was this: is it possible, even a remote chance, that he could win Comeback Player of the Year? And I started to think about it, and I'm like, he's got the talent to do so. The productivity, if his leg is fully healed and back to at least 90% of what he was, is definitely there. The one thing where I would push back on that question, though, is what's stacked up against him. The last 5 Comeback Player of the Years were all quarterbacks. And funny enough, Joe Burrow won this award twice, which, can you really win an award of like Comeback Player of the Year twice? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You have to be a really injury-riddled player like Burrow is to win that twice, but 5 straight years of quarterback winning, that's going to be tough. Now, what's the actual criteria, I'm sure you're wondering, for winning Comeback Player of the Year? It's kind of ambiguous. It's kind of up in the air. It's nebulous. It's not very clear. Nobody actually knows what the certain criteria is in order to win the award. You've got to be a good media story. You've got to have good stats. Your team's got to be good, at least to some degree, in my opinion. And like I said, outside of that, it just becomes a coin flip. Does the media, does the fan base really resonate with you? Are you somebody that's actively involved in your community? I think all of those things play a part in winning that award. But let's just go back to him, the player, for a second. In 2023, these are the top in the league for tackles. Bobby Wagner led the NFL in tackles with 183. Zaire Franklin was number 2 at 179. Singleton, not far behind at 177. So again, we're not talking about a player that is a middle of the pack when it comes to his production on the field. No, he's at the very top and the very best at what he does. Now, again, we're going to circle back really quick to his age for a second, because that's where another pushback comes in. Here's what Bleacher Report had to say about Singleton. Singleton played well in the 3 games that he played this season, talking about the 2024 season. And he's been a fairly consistent starter for his first 2 seasons with the Broncos. The problem is that he's a 31-year-old linebacker coming off of an ACL tear. Okay, so the award would be incredibly hard to win to start, just because of the position that you play. Being 31 years old, coming off of a gruesome ACL injury, and hoping that you can get back to 100% of the player that you were, All of these things combined tell me that it would be an incredibly hard thing to win. Now, again, if you're 90% of the player that you were, or even 80% of the player that you were, could we all agree that that still is around 140 tackles, 150 tackles a year? At the very least, you'd be thinking somewhere around the 120 to 130 range. I mean, when you have a nose for the football like he does, and he can space the field and understands coverages and can keep his eyes on the quarterback and the ball carrier for whoever has it, there's not many players in the NFL that can do it at the highest level like he can. So here's the question. Can he win Comeback Player of the Year? Type Y for yes, type N for no. If we were just going off of the talent alone and not the position that he played, I would tell you in a heartbeat that the answer would be yes. But I think a defensive player playing linebacker, those numbers would have to be outstanding. That's just the truth. All right, now, I want to continue on building off of this by talking about some of the other defensive injury concerns, because if you start to do your homework a little bit, you'll notice that the Broncos linebacking unit has some serious injury concerns, starting with the guy that we just picked up in free agency, Dre Greenlaw. He just tore his quadricep while he was working out. And before that, back in Super Bowl, it was a couple years ago, whatever Super Bowl that was, 58, I think it was, tore his Achilles. So you're talking about a guy that already has a lot of injuries in the bag. Drew Sanders tore his Achilles last year, so that's never a good thing. And then obviously Singleton coming off of the ACL. So now the question becomes, which one of these three players is going to face the most injuries in 2025? Because the law of averages would tell you that it's going to be one of them. And I think it's probably Greenlaw, just because he hasn't been fully healthy in quite some time. I mean, the stats prove it. He's just not on the field nearly as much as you would like. In 2023, he was great. 2022, awesome. 2021 was injured. 2024 got injured. So if your best ability is availability, that's clearly not Greenlaw's strength. So I'm going to have a little bit of pause when it comes to how good and how valuable he's going to be to this team in 2025, only because I don't necessarily know from an injury standpoint how he's going to hold up. And the same thing with Drew Sanders. I know he's the backup to Greenlaw right now, but another player that I'm excited to see get on the field because of his injury history. We haven't got to see him, at a full 100%. We haven't seen him get onto the field and show that what he can do, not only as a rotational piece, but as a depth piece. So another player that I believe has a lot to prove, but can you stay on the field? All of these questions come back down to health, and it is something to keep an eye on for all three of these players. That's just the truth. I mean, whether it be Singleton, Greenlaw, or Sanders, this linebacking unit has to do a good job of making sure they stay healthy. Whether that means you take more pride in your conditioning, or if that means you have less, for the older players, less practice time where you can have an extra day of recovery. There, you see, every single player is different. So whatever works best for them to keep them onto the field, I think is an absolute necessity. All right. Let's name a random Broncos linebacker. I've got mine. I'm going to take a little chalk take right now. Von Miller, I guess you can't. He's half. He's linebacker slash edge. But if you were going by technically, it's Von Miller. So let me know in the comment section down below who your random Broncos linebacker is. As always, my name is Moose. Until next time, be cool.